in a country where unemployment is very, very high, those that are employed, the average household is spending an average of over 75% of disposable income on debt repayment, which means that the average household only has 25% of their disposable income left to live on. That's not going to work.
No, absolutely, and I think that it's how do you get yourself out of that situation, and I think this is what people are talking to us about. So when we talk to people, when there is an opening up to talk about the issues that they face with debt, and the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, it is a taboo subject and probably one of the most taboo subjects in our cultural normative language and discussions. So when we do start talking to people about it, the first question people will ask us as researchers is, can you help? How can we make this better? What information is available? In our focus groups, we find people talking to each other saying, I learned this. People are thirsty for the information. They don't want to be in this situation. It's uncomfortable, it's difficult to talk about, it is hugely stressful for the family unit, for the expanded family unit. So there's a thirst for information. It's just not always, I think, as readily available, and certainly not in understandable chunks.
Yes. Do you find that with about 5 million adults in South Africa showing signs of over-indebtedness, there is the gap for accessible, understandable information on debt?
Absolutely. I think that if you look at how we look at over-indebtedness, I think that, again, the study probably at 5 million underreads the severity of the situation, purely because people don't necessarily see their lives as always over-indebted. So they see it as, I'm almost surviving, I'm almost making this cyclical thing work. So for those who are in this over-indebtedness space, certainly what we find is that people find the language of debt that we as a community push out is very difficult to access. The language of debt is written in the words of those who provide it rather than those who consume it often. Now, where we see it really resonating is when we can get it to language that is aimed at those who are utilizing debt rather than those who are providing it, and we can start having a dialogue. But I don't think that's happening as extensively as it could. And certainly if you look at debt contracting, it is overly onerous to understand what it's all about, what you're in for, what does this mean for my life.
And people have become so accustomed to being hungry for that credit. They are so hungry for that credit because they simply cannot afford to buy something cash.
Sure.
They simply need this lump sum of money to get through the month or to service an emergency, that all they do is they sign on the bottom line without knowing what their debt contract states and how easy it is for them to get into trouble when they don't understand what it is.
And certainly what we find in the survey is that many people do talk about that and saying that they don't really fully understand the terms. So we ask them about debt terms. We ask them about, do you understand what bad debt means? Even a word as simple as bad debt is not part of the common language.
Sure.
When you start talking about garnishee, or that now goes beyond what people are really understanding. And while I think financial institutions have tried to make it easier, and we've made some inroads, there are two things that I think are still problematic. And the first is, how do we channel the information? What is the communication channel that we can take bite-sized, simplified information to people to help them to understand? And I believe some of that is about basic education, not just debt education, basic financial education.
Yes.
And second of all is around, I believe, a sense of somewhere to go within your community that will give you the information. So the channeling is important. And then the second thing is the clarity is important.
Yes.
And clarity needs to be single-minded. And I feel that while we might have some clarity, we still cloud it in a lot of jargon. So it loses its clarity. So I think it's clarity and communication channel that people are asking for. And then who they trust to give them that information, because it's not always the banks or the other formal providers.
Definitely. Have you found that there is a common thread which runs through the reasons for over-indebtedness from one group of people to the other?
Not necessarily. I think that people's engagement with debt is very much a personal journey about their personal life circumstances. So to me, each debt story is quite unique. there are some things that I think we make the incorrect assumptions about. So, for example, I often hear it said, poor people don't know how to manage their money. That is a fallacy.
Definitely.
If anybody can make their family work on what some of the poorer people in our country earn, it means that their financial skills are probably very, very astutely tuned to making that happen.
If we can make just a very simple example.
Yes.
Somebody earning 5,000 Rand per month that has no debt and has a rental of 1,000 Rand a month, transport of 300 Rand a month, school fees of 200 Rand a month, is probably in a far better position than somebody earning 50,000 Rand a month, but that has debt obligations of 42,570 Rand a month.
I absolutely agree.
And so the idea is not to look at how much you earn. The idea is to look at how much you have left to live on.
Music to my ears, because I think the other thing is that what also comes into play is people's perceptions of the world around them and their perceptions toward finance. And somebody who earns very little can be astute, risk-averse, unwanting of credit, and somehow makes that world of theirs work in a risk-averse way. Whereas you get people who are earning 50,000, as you say, who are not risk-averse, who believe that they can continue to pile on debt and that somehow it will work out. So I think, as I say, each story is unique. It is unique in and of itself. I think that the pressure of debt is probably more keenly felt with people who earn very little, purely because of what they have to do with the very little that they earn, and also because sometimes formal debt is outside of their ability to receive, which means that they go to loan sharks, which attract, as we know, exorbitantly high interest levels. So I actually think that the difficulty with debt itself is often more severe from a stress perspective at the lower levels, but of income.
Yes.
But often that's where you see the most innovative and astute ability to manage your finances, which is absolutely what people don't think is true.